Chapter 193. That disciple looked to be in his early 20s. He had rather sharp features and was slightly more well-built than normal disciples. But at that instant, he knelt at his stall with a melancholic expression. His large build was curled into a ball as he looked into the passing crowd sadly and helplessly. Yiqingtang looked at the stall in front of that man, and her lips slightly tugged up after this look. The disciple was not selling any rare items, but had some spirit crystals of varied sizes. Spirit crystal was a type of crystal which naturally stored spirit energy. Many veins occasionally produced it, and although not much was produced, it was not considered rare either. A spirit crystal was different from a spirit stone. The spirit energy in spirit stones could be absorbed and converted by humans, while the spirit energy in spirit crystals was completely combined with the crystal, and there was no way one could extract it for cultivation. Furthermore, because the spirit crystal contained spirit energy, there were many cotton fiber-looking crystalline shapes in the crystal body, which greatly affected the lustrousness and appearance of the spirit crystal. As a result, almost no one was interested in them. Spirit crystals were unable to replace the effects of spirit stones, and their appearances were even more incomparable. It could be said that spirit crystals had a worthless existence. This type of item should not appear in the sect since, after all, sect disciples were from renowned families and had extensive knowledge. Such useless items like spirit crystals simply would not attract the attention of any disciple, and there were some disciples who even laughed when they saw the spirit crystals. Which fool actually took this thing out? It would be weird if they could be sold. Regardless of the number of people walking past him, none of them stopped to look at his items. When compared to the stalls selling elixirs beside him, his area was extremely empty. An herbal faction disciple who just sold 2 bottles of elixirs smiled as he looked at the shimming points on his bracelet. He turned around and spoke to a despondent-looking disciple. Tonghua, I told you long ago that no one wants these spirit crystals. Instead of sitting here foolishly, why not take on some missions to earn some shimming points? After all, you're a fist faction disciple and selling spirit crystals is still too. The herbal faction disciple appeared to be well-meaning, but the sarcasm in his eyes revealed his real intentions. Tonghua looked at him and gave a bitter laugh without saying anything. This herbal faction disciple, and he entered the outer sect at the same time. He had a good physique, and his natural endowments were considered not bad in his batch. Rather, it was that herbal faction disciple who had an average natural endowment. However, it was different years later. Tonghua did not put that herbal faction disciple's mockery to heart and only looked after his stall silently, waiting for that slim chance. This scene fell into Qingtang's eyes, and the herbal faction disciple's mockery still lingered around her ears. The corner of her lips tugged upwards slightly as she walked towards Tonghua's stall. How do you sell this spirit crystal? A clear female voice suddenly traveled into his ears, and the depressed Tonghua looked up in surprise, only to be completely taken aback there and then. Against the sunlight, the young girl was so beautiful as though she was not a mortal on earth, while her smile seemed to be able to intoxicate someone. Chapter 194. Tonghua was rather besotted from looking for a moment, and only after that girl waved her hands smilingly in front of his eyes did he finally return to his senses. He instinctively shivered as a blush crept onto his chiseled face. How could there be such a good-looking junior sister? Do you want to buy spirit crystals? Tonghua had a rigid nature, and because he was tall and well-built on top of the fact that his strong facial features made him look fierce, there were rarely any female disciples who interacted with him. Now that he met such a pretty junior sister, he could not help but be tongue-tied. The herbal faction disciple nearby saw that shockingly beautiful girl as well, and his eyes glowed. Before waiting for Tonghua to say anything, he immediately opened his mouth. This junior sister, spirit crystals are not spirit stones. Even if you buy it back, there will be no use for it. Don't get cheated, he said without caring that Tonghua was right there. Yiqingtang looked at the both of them with a smile and understood more or less. This senior brother, Tonghua, had such a poor business partly due to the help from this herbal faction disciple, didn't he? Tonghua's expression turned a little ugly after the herbal faction disciple said those words in his face. He was about to say something, but the herbal faction disciple spoke before him again. Tong Hua, this little junior sister seems to be quite young. You must not cheat her because of her young age." Then, Tong Hua was really furious that his face flushed. When had he cheated anyone? He could not even say anything and was already called a cheater by this herbal faction disciple. He was enraged. The herbal faction disciple looked at Tong Hua's red face in delight and was not at all bothered. Disciples were not allowed to fight amongst themselves in the sect, and he was certain that Tong Hua would definitely not act recklessly. Moreover, he was sure from the start that while Tong Hua appeared rather fierce on the outside, he was a very honest man. The herbal faction disciples' words were to, firstly, embarrass Tong Hua and, secondly, establish some relations with this beautiful junior sister. However, senior brother Tong, is it? You haven't said how you're going to sell these spirit crystals, Enchanting said to Tong Hua with a flower-like smile without bothering with the herbal faction's provocation. The fury in Tong Hua was extinguished by that crisp-sounding senior brother Tong. He, who was not good at conversing with people of the opposite sex, looked at Enchanting before him and panicked a little. This spirit crystal is sold at 1 shimming point for 1 crystal. If you like them, 2 shimming points for 3 crystals is fine as well. Tong Hua said this one sentence with many stumbles, and his voice became softer as he spoke on. 1 shimming point was really a low price. While this spirit crystal was useless, it was worth more than this price. According to normal calculations, it should be 2 to 3 shimming points for 1 crystal no matter what. The price that Tong Hua set surprised Yi Qingtang slightly. The herbal faction disciple saw that Yi Qingtang did not reply immediately and mocked. Tong Hua, this spirit crystal is simply a useless piece of rubbish. Isn't it too big of a rip-off to sell it for 1 shimming point? Tong Hua hurriedly waved his hands as though Tong Hua was afraid that Yi Qingtang believed the other party's words and misunderstood him. I am not ripping off from her. However, Yi Qingtang replied with a grin. How many spirit crystals does senior brother Tong have? Tong Hua was a little confused as to what this junior sister asked it for, but still said honestly, about 70 to 80 plus. Chapter 195. Yi Qingtang calculated mentally and immediately smiled. I want all of them. Right after Yi Qingtang spoke, Tong Hua was dumbfounded, and even the herbal faction disciple who had been mocking Tong Hua felt his jaw drop from the shock. She wants all 70 to 80 of them? Is this little junior sister crazy? Tong Hua was stunned for quite a while and suspected whether he heard wrongly. He could not help but confirm again. Little junior sister, how many did you say you wanted? Yi Qingtang's smile remained as she said, all. Tong Hua was really shocked. He got these spirit crystals half a year ago, and after selling for a whole 6 months, he only sold 2 or 3 pieces. Never would he dream that someone would actually buy all of his spirit crystals at one go. And it was someone who seemed to be a newly entered disciple. Are you sure? But these spirit crystals really do not have many uses. Tong Hua hoped to quickly get rid of these hot potatoes. But when he saw this pretty junior sister bravely saying that she wanted to buy all the spirit crystals, Tong Hua did not dare to sell them instead. He was afraid he would really rip off this little junior sister. If you really like it, they'll just gift you 2 of them then. It is better if you don't buy them, Tong Hua said as he scratched his head. Yi Qingtang was tickled by Tong Hua's frank response. This senior brother was really an honest man. Senior brother, I'm not joking with you. I want all of the spirit crystals. Let's just go with the price you said just now. 1 shimming point for 2 crystals, Yi Qingtang said generously. From aside, the expression which the herbal faction disciple used to look at Yi Qingtang was as though he was looking at a lunatic. Why was it that this junior sister was born with such a pretty face but did not have any brains? Even if the price was 1 shimming point for 2 spirit crystals, she would still need 30 to 40 shimming points, and spending this amount on 2 bottles of she spirit pills was more worth it. Tong Hua did not know what to do with Yi Qingtang's stubbornness and was troubled over it, but suddenly saw a familiar person walking in his direction. He hurriedly stood up and shouted, Junior brother Qin? Here. Qin Huan, who was strolling leisurely in the dragon court, suddenly heard a shout, and when he looked over, he saw a tall and muscular Tong Hua waving at him frantically. Senior brother Tong? What happened to you? Qin Huan walked over brightly and could not help but laugh when he took a look at Tong Hua's stall. Senior brother Qin, you haven't sold this batch of spirit crystals which you got cheated to accept that time? I think it is better to find a fool quickly and sell them off cheaply. Junior brother Qin, stop talking already. Help me here. This person wants to buy all of my spirit crystals at one go. Hurry. Persuade her not to do it. Tong Hua knew that he was not good at talking to people of the opposite sex, so he might as well pull Qin Huan, who was good at flirting with girls, to help him out. Upon hearing Tong Hua, Qin Huan could not help but laugh as he turned to look at the person who Tong Hua spoke about. There is really a fool who wants to buy these rotten. Rotten? The moment Qin Huan turned around, he was met with a pair of smiling eyes, and his words were immediately stuck in his throat before he finished his sentence. Yi Qingtang folded her arms and looked at Qin Huan with a beam as a dangerous glint emerged in her eyes. She said casually, "So I'm actually a fool in senior brother Qin's eyes." Chapter 196. Qin Huan's lips twitched as he looked at Yi Qingtang, and his head was about to explode. Shit. Tong Hua, this scoundrel, screwed him. So it's junior sister Yi. Haha. What a coincidence. Qin Huan said as he broke out in a cold sweat. How he wished he could hang Tong Hua, who called him over, on a tree and hammer him. Yi Qingtang raised a brow slightly and swept a meaningful look at Qin Huan. Qin Huan only felt a gush of cold air behind his back, and the smile on his face broke into pieces. Tong Hua looked strangely at the frozen Qin Huan, and had not sensed that Qin Huan became strange suddenly as he asked curiously, "Junior brother Qin, do you know this little junior sister?" Qin Huan put on a smile that was uglier than a cry and nodded tragically. "She is. Junior sister Yi. Why would I not know her? Was it too late for him to leave now?" Tong Hua nodded slowly and did not notice Qin Huan's expression, which read, "I want to die right now," and said uprightly, "That's good then. Qin Huan, help me persuade this junior sister. There is not much use if she buys these spirit crystals back. If she likes them, it's fine for me to gift some to her. These shimming points cannot be anyhow spent, especially new disciples." Tong Hua persuaded earnestly. If not for the fact that Qin Huan could not defeat Tong Hua, he really wanted to box this fool to death. New disciples' shimming points could not be anyhow spent? That applied to others, but not Yi Qingtang, who was a tycoon. He personally witnessed Yi Qingtang cheerfully taking the head of a villain on the assassination roll to claim her reward after receiving over 60 shimming points from the giant lizard mission. Qin Huan really wanted to tell Tong Hua that he was worried for the wrong person, and that the number of shimming points in Yi Qingtang's hands was more than both of theirs added together. However, a wise man would submit to the circumstances. Qin Huan simply did not bother about Tong Hua's persuasion and looked straight at Yi Qingtang. "Junior sister Yi likes this spirit crystal? You should have said earlier. I have known senior brother Tong for a long time, and I can let him sell them at a cheaper price. I see that there's quite a number of spirit crystals. How about I help you to carry them back?" Qin Huan smiled in an extremely suck-up manner. After personally witnessing Yi Qingtang's powers, he did not dare to offend such a fierce junior sister. Furthermore, Yi Qingtang's fire-resistant soft armor even saved his life. Who knew how many more treasures this little junior sister had? He really had to sweet-talk her and offer his assistance the best he could. Tong Hua was dumbfounded. He clearly got Qin Huan over to persuade Yi Qingtang. Why did he suddenly betray him? Yi Qingtang chuckled at the suck-up Qin Huan and said, "Senior brother Qin's price is very low already, and it doesn't need to be lowered further. However, if senior brother Qin is free, I can't approve your request to help me move my things." Tong Hua already said previously that if Yi Qingtang wanted, he could sell 2 spirit crystals at 1 shimming point. This price was already shockingly low, and Yi Qingtang was not the type to squeeze money out of others. No matter what, she would not go overboard. "No problem. Leave it to me." Qin Huan did not care that his manly image was broken at that very point. His suck-up behavior completely confused Tong Hua. "Senior brother Tong, pack the spirit crystals. They'll carry them back for junior sister Yi," Qin Huan said. Tong Hua was really on the verge of tears. Why did the help that he found turn to help Yi Qingtang in urging him instead? Chapter 197. With the betrayal of his ally, Tong Hua could only pack the spirit crystals with a sad face. Just by seeing his expression, those who did not know would think that he was robbed. Yi Qingtang nimbly transferred the corresponding 30-plus shimming points to Tong Hua. While Tong Hua got rid of these burning potatoes, he felt extremely guilty towards Yi Qingtang, who got ripped off. Junior Sister Yi, if there's anything you need help with in the future, just go ahead and ask me. Thank you so much for today, Tong Hua said to Yi Qingtang earnestly. Yi Qingtang kept feeling as though she was taken advantage of, but the person who was taken advantage of was clearly Tong Hua. If one was overly honest and good-natured, others would feel quite helpless as well. Tong Hua stammered a while more to Yi Qingtang and then finally packed up his items and returned to the fist faction for practice. On the other hand, Qin Huan, who was called over halfway, had no choice but to pay a price for his big mouth. Carrying 70 to 80-plus spirit crystals, Qin Huan grinned at Yi Qingtang and said, "Junior Sister Yi, are you returning now?" Yi Qingtang turned around and walked out of the dragon court without forgetting to signal Qin Huan behind her with a finger. Qin Huan followed up quickly. "Junior Sister Yi, what are you buying so many spirit crystals for?" Qin Huan asked carefully, deeply afraid that what he said previously had offended Yi Qingtang. Gu Yanxiu was still waiting for Yi Qingtang to form a team with him to go on missions, and if Yi Qingtang complained to Gu Yanxiu, Qin Huan predicted that Gu Yanxiu would kick him out of the team in order to protect Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang replied, "Obviously because there's a use." Qin Huan remained silent. "You have many shimming points, so you can spend lavishly." Yi Qingtang thought of something and asked, "Senior brother Qin, do you know who else has spirit crystals?" Qin Huan was dumbfounded. She bought so many already, but it still was not enough? She still wants to buy more spirit crystals? Is she crazy? However, he was not bold enough to say this in Yi Qingtang's face. "I'm afraid there isn't really anyone who has them. Spirit crystals are rare and not easy to find usually. Although veins produce them, it is extremely rare. Furthermore, no one required them, and thus, this item was even rarer. Those that Tong Hua had were ones that he was being cheated to accept. Otherwise, no one would have so many spirit crystals for no reason. One must know that it was already amazing when a vein produced at most 1 or 2 crystals." Qin Huan mumbled. "Cheated?" Yi Qingtang stopped in her tracks. She knew how useless spirit crystals were to humans as well, and thus was extremely happy when she saw them in Tong Hua's hands. Chapter 198. And because of this, the blacksmith reputation skyrocketed, and weapons forged with spirit crystals were crowned as spirit weapons. Yi Qingtang lost her spirit root in her previous life, and once thought of using the power of a spirit weapon to counter enemies. Thus, she took a blacksmith as a teacher that time as well, where she hid from people and learned the craft at the same time. She was very clear that the current weapons were simply not on the same level as the future spirit weapons. If she could collect more spirit crystals before that mighty figure took out the first spirit weapon, it would definitely be of great help to her in the future. One must know that once spirit weapons exploded in popularity, all the spirit crystals on Earth were almost snatched away immediately by all the forces, and every crystal in the future could be sold at sky-high prices. Yi Qingtang did not expect that she would see so many spirit crystals in the Dragon Court, and since she saw them, she would definitely not pass them by and got them all decisively. However, Yi Qingtang was rather curious as to why Tong Hua had so many spirit crystals. When she mentioned this, Qin Huan could not help but tug his lips upwards. "Isn't it all because that nincompoop is foolish? Half a year ago, he went out on a rewarded mission with a few senior brothers in the outer sect. Don't look at how upright senior brother Tong is. He could even crumble a huge boulder into pieces if he threw out a punch. He put in a lot of effort in missions, and it could be said that he was highly connected to the completion of missions. Logically, he would be distributed the most basic amount of shimming points. However, those disciples on the mission with him took advantage of his good nature. All of them said they badly needed shimming points and found an excuse to swallow the share that senior brother Tong should have. They even made it sound nice that they were not taking his share for nothing and auctioned these spirit crystals for him in an auction house near their mission location as a compensation. Qin Huan became increasingly angry as he spoke. He had known Tong Hua for a long time already, and when he knew about this incident that time, he almost got into a fight with those bastards to help Tong Hua. Yi Qingtang could not believe what she heard. She did feel that Tong Hua was very honest, but this was too innocent. Suddenly, Yi Qingtang felt that senior brother Yun's good man image was not that hard to accept after comparing him to Tong Hua. If you really want spirit crystals, you can take a look at the auction houses nearby, Qin Huan said casually, though he did not know what Yi Qingtang wanted spirit crystals for. Yi Qingtang had a plan as well and sympathized with the overly honest Tong Hua little. Qin Huan followed Yi Qingtang and brought the bag of spirit crystals back to her room. Just when they returned to the room, they saw Su Wan, who was about to leave the room. Su Wan's expression changed a little when she saw Yi Qingtang, but when she saw Qin Huan behind her, she could not help but narrow her eyes, though she left without saying anything. "Where do I place this?" Qin Huan asked while carrying the spirit crystals when he entered the room. But when he said this, he suddenly realized that he seemed to be glared at by a pair of sharp eyes. His eyes followed the direction of that feeling and suddenly saw that silver wolf which was lying on Yi Qingtang's bed was staring at him with an extremely dangerous expression. Qin Huan had goosebumps all over from the silver wolf's glare, and he did not know why, but he felt that if he stayed any longer, something ominous would happen. Right after he placed down the bag, he quickly found an excuse and escaped. Chapter 199-1. Qin Huan ran so quickly as though someone was after his life. Yi Qingtang could not help but find that scene funny. She thought that Qin Huan was worried that she would settle scores with him and did not notice that the murderous expression in the silver wolf's eyes faded after Qin Huan's departure. "Heh, little baby, I got many good things today." Yi Qingtang went up to the silver wolf and grinned at it as when she saw that the room was empty. The silver wolf quietly looked at Yi Qingtang's salivating expression with a very complicated expression. "I have not given you a massage today. Now is just nice." Yi Qingtang did not care whether her silver wolf could understand or not as she rolled up her sleeves and aimed at its furry body with her fingers. Once the silver wolf heard the word massage, its body froze, and before it could react, a pair of dishonest hands stroked its body familiarly. As though she felt the wolf's frozen body, Yi Qingtang comforted it gently. "Don't worry, baby. I will be very gentle." The silver wolf looked at the besotted Yi Qingtang speechlessly and laid down with a resigned expression, letting her trample it as she wished. Yi Qingtang was caressing the wolf delightedly, but did not know that Su Wan, who went out previously, went to look for Yun Shu. She exaggeratedly told that Yi Qingtang and Qin Huan entered and left the room together, and that Yi Qingtang was too busy getting close with other senior brothers and probably had no time to meet Yun Shu. Yun Shu did not say anything, though. Because Yi Qingtang had the silver wolf, she hurriedly returned to massage the wolf after cultivation every day and did not have many interactions with Yun Shu. Days passed. In the blink of an eye, it had been a month since the new disciples entered the sect. In this 1 month, all the new disciples familiarized themselves with everything in Xinling sect's outer sect and were on the right track in their cultivation. And once this first month was over, the new disciples were to welcome a new challenge. Sect-appointed missions. This was a mission that every sect disciple had to complete, and the contents of the mission were appointed by the outer sect warden. This day, all the new disciples were summoned. The teaching warden stood in front of them with many files in his hand. "Today, the sect will appoint a mission to every one of you. Regardless of a solo or a team mission with other disciples, all of you must place the sect's glory as the main priority when you are out handling matters. If you do anything which damages the sect's reputation, you will be punished according to the sect rules," said the teaching warden coldly. Everyone nodded. Then, the warden handed down the missions. While these disciples were to begin on sect missions, they did not have enough experience after all. Apart from Yi Qingtang, who completed a rewarded mission half a month ago, most had not come into contact with such missions. Thus, most of the missions were still relatively easy. Yun Shu only exchanged a few words with Yi Qingtang in the past few weeks and finally met her then. "How are you recently, junior sister Yi?" Yun Shu asked with a smile. Yi Qingtang had a handsome wolf to accompany her these few days, and her days were spent comfortably at ease. The fatigue from a whole day of cultivation would instantly vanish every time she stroked the wolf in the name of massaging it. Everything is good. I wonder what senior brother Yun thinks of this appointed mission. Yi Qingtang asked smilingly. Although she was not overly close to Yun Shu these days, she was always paying attention to any news regarding Yun Shu. She did not forget her plan to investigate the truth behind Yun Shu's fall in the past life. Chapter 199-2. Sect Mission 2. I did ask around about it previously. Yun Shu obviously paid attention to the sect mission matters previously. A month after the new disciples entered the sect, they would have to take on their first sect mission. These kind of missions for the new disciple were relatively easy and were basically completed in groups. Just as Yun Shu and Yi Qingtang were talking, Su Wan, who was standing a few steps away from Yun Shu, had a dark expression. She glared right at the both of them, and a deathly cold air seemed to be hidden in her seemingly gentle eyes. Su Wan originally wanted to use the opportunity to become closer to Yun Shu, but she did not expect that before she walked to Yun Shu's side, Yi Qingtang would already be talking to Yun Shu. Looking at their intimate behavior, Su Wan's heart was as though it was chopped into pieces by a knife. Senior brother Yun's eyes were glued on Yi Qingtang. Su Wan was clearly standing behind senior brother Yun, but he did not even realize she was here. On what basis? Su Wan quietly clenched her fist tightly and looked at Yi Qingtang's exquisite side profile, wishing that she could slash Yi Qingtang's face with a knife. She clearly tried all sorts of means for Yun Shu and Yi Qingtang to not interact with each other in this period of time. She clearly told Yun Shu many bad things about Yi Qingtang, and she never even mentioned to Yi Qingtang that Yun Shu wanted her to find him. But why was Yun Shu acting as if nothing happened? Hatred and resentment filled Su Wan's eyes, and it was at this instant when the teaching warden assigned the missions to the disciples. This is your first time accepting a sect mission. To ensure that you all can complete it successfully, I will appoint the more skilled people as the missions team leader. Then, the warden looked at the files in his hands and called out a few names. Yun Shu and Lu Xiaowen were the most skilled amongst the new disciples and were obviously in the list of names called out. Apart from the two of them, the warden called out another 4 people and handed down the missions that they had to take on. After looking at the mission, these disciples could freely choose the other members to embark on the mission with. These 6 people were the most skilled amongst their batch of new disciples, and the difference between the disciples' skills could be seen from here. The 6 people who were called out took a step forward and stood within everyone's line of sight. Junior sister Su, senior brother Yun is also a leader for a mission. I think he will definitely choose you. Lu Yu, who was standing beside Su Wan, looked at the glorious Yun Shu as she beamed at Su Wan, who wore a gloomy expression. Su Wan returned to her senses and quickly hid away the resentment in her eyes as she smiled gently. Who knows who senior brother Yun will choose? Just now, junior sister Yu was talking to senior brother Yun, and perhaps she had already told him about this. After hearing, Lu Yu looked at Yi Qingtang with a face of disdain. What a vixen! I heard that after she returned from the rewarded mission the other time, she did not interact much with senior brother Yun. Yet now, she is acting chummy with him. Isn't it all because she knows that she must take on a sect mission already and wants to cozy up to senior brother Yun? Junior sister Su, you have been on such good terms with senior brother Yun recently, and Yi Qingtang cannot compete against this. There are so many rumors in the outer sect about you and senior brother Yun now. I can see that senior brother Yun treats you pretty well, and he will definitely not be bewitched by that vixen Yi Qingtang. Su Wan could not help but smile shyly when she heard that. Indeed, many disciples were talking about the relationship between her and Yun Shu in this half a month. Chapter 199-3. Sect Mission 3. Both Su Wan and Yi Qingtang were close to Yun Shu, but there was a huge difference between them. While Su Wan was also a new disciple, she was far above Yi Qingtang, regardless of her family background or the grade of her spirit root. Although Yi Qingtang was superior in terms of appearance, the feeling that they gave people were completely different. In the eyes of others, there was nothing good about Yi Qingtang other than her face, and they felt that her relationship with Yun Shu was all Yi Qingtang's one-sided wishful thinking. Rather, They felt that Su-won was more compatible with Yun-shu. Lu Yu uttered words of support for Su-won as she made a plan for herself as well. Yun-shu's skills were good, and if she could work on a mission together with Yun-shu using Su-won's relationship with him, Lu Yu believed that her score in the mission would be higher. Senior sister Lu, these are merely our guesses. It is still up to senior brother Yun to choose, Su-won said gently. According to the rules, Yun-shu and the others were to pick their team members in order of the rank of their spirit roots. Brother Yun, which candidate do you have in mind this time? Lu Xiaowen asked Yun-shu while raising a brow. Yun-shu gave a faint smile. It is all our first time participating in a sect mission. I am not very certain as well. Lu Xiaowen laughed. Brother Yun, you're too humble. Didn't you take extra care of junior sister Yi previously? Though I rarely see you and junior sister Yi interacting after entering the sect. Not many people knew that Yi Qingtang took on a rewarded mission. Among the new disciples, only Su-won and Yun-shu knew, but they did not tell anyone else about it. Furthermore, the new disciples were too busy familiarizing themselves with matters in the outer sect over the past half a month and never noticed Yi Qingtang's disappearance. The only thing that everyone knew was that Yun-shu did not really interact with Yi Qingtang in this month, and that the person who was always by his side was Su-won instead. Thus, many snickered that Yi Qingtang did not manage to cozy up to Yun-shu. Yun-shu obviously understood the meaning behind Lu Ziyuan's words and frowned slightly. You can start selecting your team members already, the warden said. Yun-shu looked away and towards the new disciples. If there were no accidents, senior and junior brothers with yellow spirit roots would be the first to be selected. Yun-shu was still thinking of who to pick, but saw Su-won looking at him expectantly. As he thought of how Su-won cared for him in these few days, Yun-shu, who had a kind heart, could not bear to reject her. Junior sister Su. Yun-shu slowly announced the name of his first teammate. As Yun-shu spoke, Su-won could not help but smile. Under everyone's gaze, she slowly walked up while looking at Yi Qingtang from the corner of her eye with a sarcastic expression. Yi Qingtang, no matter how good you are, the inferiority of your spirit root will not be changed. Su-won went forward and stood behind Yun-shu, and this started discussions among many people. Everyone knew that Yun-shu only had many interactions with Yi Qingtang and Su-won in the outer sect. Moreover, many noticed Su-won's affection for Yun-shu. Now that Yun-shu chose Su-won as his team member, wouldn't Yi Qingtang be abandoned then? In a moment, everyone looked at the leisurely Yi Qingtang with a nosy expression. If a useless red spirit root did not have Yun-shu's protection, which group would want her? Yi Qingtang stood calmly and did not take any of those bad-meaning gazes around her to heart. This type of mission for new disciples was of no difficulty to her regardless of which group she joined, and, thus, she saw no point in worrying. Chapter 200. I did ask around about it previously. Yun-shu obviously paid attention to the sect mission matters previously. A month after the new disciples entered the sect, they would have to take on their first sect mission. These kind of missions for the new disciple were relatively easy and were basically completed in groups. Just as Yun-shu and Yi Qingtang were talking, Su-won, who was standing a few steps away from Yun-shu, had a dark expression. She glared right at the both of them, and a deathly cold air seemed to be hidden in her seemingly gentle eyes. Su-won originally wanted to use the opportunity to become closer to Yun-shu, but she did not expect that before she walked to Yun-shu's side, Yi Qingtang would already be talking to Yun-shu. Looking at their intimate behavior, Su-won's heart was as though it was chopped into pieces by a knife. Senior brother Yun's eyes were glued on Yi Qingtang. Su-won was clearly standing behind senior brother Yun, but he did not even realize she was here. On what basis? Su-won quietly clenched her fist tightly and looked at Yi Qingtang's exquisite side profile, wishing that she could slash Yi Qingtang's face with a knife. She clearly tried all sorts of means for Yun-shu and Yi Qingtang to not interact with each other in this period of time. She clearly told Yun-shu many bad things about Yi Qingtang, and she never even mentioned to Yi Qingtang that Yun-shu wanted her to find him. But why was Yun-shu acting as if nothing happened? Hatred and resentment filled Su-won's eyes. And it was at this instant when the teaching warden assigned the missions to the disciples. This is your first time accepting a sect mission. To ensure that you all can complete it successfully, I will appoint the more skilled people as the missions team leader." Then, the warden looked at the files in his hands and called out a few names. Yun Shu and Lu Xiaowen were the most skilled amongst the new disciples and were obviously in the list of names called out. Apart from the two of them, the warden called out another 4 people and handed down the missions that they had to take on. After looking at the mission, these disciples could freely choose the other members to embark on the mission with. These 6 people were the most skilled amongst their batch of new disciples, and the difference between the disciples' skills could be seen from here. The 6 people who were called out took a step forward and stood within everyone's line of sight. Junior sister Su, senior brother Yun is also a leader for a mission. I think he will definitely choose you. Lu Yu, who was standing beside Su Wan, looked at the glorious Yun Shu as she beamed at Su Wan, who wore a gloomy expression. Su Wan returned to her senses and quickly hid away the resentment in her eyes as she smiled gently. Who knows who senior brother Yun will choose? Chapter 201. Both Su Wan and Yi Qingtang were close to Yun Shu, but there was a huge difference between them. While Su Wan was also a new disciple, she was far above Yi Qingtang, regardless of her family background or the grade of her spirit root. Although Yi Qingtang was superior in terms of appearance, the feeling that they gave people were completely different. In the eyes of others, there was nothing good about Yi Qingtang other than her face, and they felt that her relationship with Yun Shu was all Yi Qingtang's one-sided wishful thinking. Rather, they felt that Su Wan was more compatible with Yun Shu. Lu Yu uttered words of support for Su Wan as she made a plan for herself as well. Yun Shu's skills were good, and if she could work on a mission together with Yun Shu using Su Wan's relationship with him, Liu believed that her score in the mission would be higher. Senior sister Lu, these are merely our guesses. It is still up to senior brother Yun to choose, Su Wan said gently. According to the rules, Yun Shu and the others were to pick their team members in order of the rank of their spirit roots. Brother Yun, which candidate do you have in mind this time? Lu Xiaowen asked Yun Shu while raising a brow. Yun Shu gave a faint smile. It is all our first time participating in a sect mission. I am not very certain as well. Lu Xiaowen laughed. Brother Yun, you're too humble. Didn't you take extra care of junior sister Yi previously? Though I rarely see you and junior sister Yi interacting after entering the sect. Not many people knew that Yi Qingtang took on a rewarded mission. Among the new disciples, only Su Wan and Yun Shu knew, but they did not tell anyone else about it. Furthermore, the new disciples were too busy familiarizing themselves with matters in the outer sect over the past half a month and never noticed Yi Qingtang's disappearance. The only thing that everyone knew was that Yun Shu did not really interact with Yi Qingtang in this month, and that the person who was always by his side was Su Wan instead. Thus, many snickered that Yi Qingtang did not manage to cozy up to Yun Shu. Yun Shu obviously understood the meaning behind Lu Xiaowen's words and frowned slightly. You can start selecting your team members already, the warden said. Yun Shu looked away and towards the new disciples. If there were no accidents, senior and junior brothers with yellow spirit roots would be the first to be selected. Yun Shu was still thinking of who to pick, but saw Su Wan looking at him expectantly. As he thought of how Su Wan cared for him in these few days, Yun Shu, who had a kind heart, could not bear to reject her. Junior sister Su. Yun Shu slowly announced the name of his first teammate. As Yun Shu spoke, Su Wan could not help but smile. Under everyone's gaze, she slowly walked up while looking at Yi Qingtang from the corner of her eye with a sarcastic expression. Yi Qingtang, no matter how good you are, the inferiority of your spirit root will not be changed. Su Wan went forward and stood behind Yun Shu, and this started discussions among many people. Everyone knew that Yun Shu only had many interactions with Yi Qingtang and Su Wan in the outer sect. Moreover, many noticed Su Wan's affection for Yun Shu. Now that Yun Shu chose Su Wan as his team member, wouldn't Yi Qingtang be abandoned then? In a moment, everyone looked at the leisurely Yi Qingtang with a nosy expression. If a useless red spirit root did not have Yun Shu's protection, which group would want her? Yi Qingtang stood calmly and did not take any of those bad-meaning gazes around her to heart. This type of mission for new disciples was of no difficulty to her regardless of which group she joined, and, thus, she saw no point in worrying. Chapter 202. As the disciples were being called up one by one, the teammates behind Yunshu and the others were gradually fixed. At last, only Yi Qingtang was left. Yunshu also specifically left a spot where he planned to invite Yi Qingtang to join at the end. However, just when Yunshu was about to open his mouth, the warden suddenly looked at Yi Qingtang and said, "Yi Qingtang, there are other arrangements for your sect mission?" The warden's words instantly caused a commotion. Yunshu, who was about to say something, was stunned as well, while Su Wan could not help but break out into an arrogant smile. She could see that Yunshu wanted to invite Yi Qingtang, but the warden did not even plan to place Yi Qingtang in this mission. Thinking about it, it was true as well. With such an inferior spirit root, which team would she not be a burden in? Yi Qingtang raised a brow slightly. She did not expect that there would be such a thing. Just as everyone was curious as to what other arrangements Yi Qingtang had, the warden waved a hand at an area not far away. Then, a tall and good-looking young disciple slowly walked out and appeared in front of everyone. Once everyone saw that disciple's face, they were all astonished. His face actually looked a little similar to Zhou Chu, the person who set up an arena to cheat them. "Yi Qingtang, you will do your sect mission with Zhou Xian over here. Zhou Xian will personally tell you about the mission contents later," the warden said without expression. Zhou Xian walked forward, and his lips formed into a smile as he looked at the beautiful girl before him. "Junior sister Yi, it's our first meeting. Please take care of me." Zhou Xian's appearance left many new disciples dumbfounded. What is going on? Yi Qingtang's first sect mission is actually with an old disciple? It should be known that the first sect mission was relatively easier, but missions that Zhou Xian, an old disciple, took on had many hidden dangers. Surprise flashed across Su Wan's eyes as well, but once she saw Zhou Xian's face, an evil thought appeared in her mind. Zhou Xian, Zhou Chu. These two people's faces were so similar. Could it be that? The surprise in her eyes instantly turned into a gloat. Everyone still remembered how Yi Qingtang beat Zhou Chu up on the arena the other time. Yi Qingtang raised her brows slightly as she looked at Zhou Xian before her. She sneered in her heart. Isn't this Zhou Xian the older brother of Zhou Chu? She was initially curious as to why her mission was suddenly changed, but did not think that someone was actually behind all of this. Looking at the devious-looking Zhou Xian, Yi Qingtang already guessed that Zhou Xian most likely bribed the warden in secret, which caused things to become the way they were right now. "Senior brother Zhou, that's too polite of you," Yi Qingtang said calmly with a faint smile. Zhou Xian sized up Yi Qingtang with a scoff in his heart. Exactly like what Yi Qingtang guessed, he already knew long ago that the new disciples would take on sect missions after entering the sect for a month. Yi Qingtang's teaching warden once taught Zhou Xian as well, and thus, Zhou Xian used this opportunity to change Yi Qingtang's mission. Disciples were forbidden from fighting amongst themselves in the sect. But if they left the sect, things would be different. If there were some injuries sustained in the mission, would they not be considered natural? Chapter 203. Zhou Xian looked at Yi Qingtang with a smile. There seemed to not be any evil intentions on his face, but there was a vicious look in his smiling eyes. He leaned forward slightly and whispered into Yi Qingtang's ears. "Previously, Junior Sister Yi received 3 moves from my brother, Zhou Chu, on the arena, and I thought that you must be very skilled. Wouldn't it be a pity if you went on normal missions? Thus, this time, I hope that Junior Sister Yi will really put your best performance in the mission." Zhou Xian smiled very kindly, but every word he said emitted a frightening sense of danger. Yi Qingtang scoffed in her heard, though she did not show any expressions on her face. "Please take care of me, Senior Brother Zhou." Zhou Xian laughed. "Of course." Then he stood straight and said, "I still have some matters to settle. I will take a leave first." Then, Zhou Xian turned around and left after bidding the warden goodbye. From the start to the end, Zhou Xian did not mention anything regarding the mission to Yi Qingtang. All the missions were fixed, and each team needed to discuss the contents of the mission by themselves. Yunshu was originally worried about Yi Qingtang and wanted to check on her but was held back by Su Wan, who used the reason that they had to discuss the mission. Yi Qingtang smiled faintly as she looked at how everyone was gathered together. Then, she left and mentally prepared for Zhou Xian's accident. But before Yi Qingtang returned to her room, she saw Qin Huan standing outside the dorm with an anxious expression. The moment Qin Huan saw Yi Qingtang, he hurriedly ran up to her. "Junior sister Yi, there's something I need to tell you. Be careful these few days, someone wants to harm you," Qin Huan said hurriedly. Yi Qingtang replied, "Are you talking about Zhou Xian?" Qin Huan was taken aback. "How do you know?" "That Zhou Xian is Zhou Chu's older brother. He might already know that you injured Zhou Chu the other time. When I was taking on a mission earlier, I heard that Zhou Xian seemed to have looked for your teaching warden to add you into his sect mission. You must be careful. Zhou Xian is not like Zhou Chu. He is extremely insidious." Yi Qingtang laughed. "He has already looked for me, and the warden had placed me in his team as well. In a few days, I will have to go on a mission together with him." Qin Huan was stunned when he heard Yi Qingtang. His expression changed, and he muttered a curse. "I knew that bastard Zhou Xian was sinister. I didn't think that he would take action so quickly. You must be more careful. Zhou Xian has many means and tricks. He does not dare to do anything to you in the sect, but using this mission, he will definitely not let you off easily. I think, how about you find an excuse to reject this mission?" Qin Huan could not help but be worried about Yi Qingtang. In the outer sect, Zhou Xian's abilities were not considered weak. Although Qin Huan knew that Yi Qingtang was skilled, it was still too much danger for Yi Qingtang to go on a mission together with such an insidious person like Zhou Xian. "How can a sect mission be rejected?" Yi Qingtang replied. Qin Huan's shoulders slumped down immediately. Sect missions were missions that must be done. After being appointed a sect mission, one must proceed to complete it, and there was simply no way of rejecting it. "How about, I'll ask senior brother Gu to talk to Zhou Xian?" Qin Huan suggested. Gu Yanxiu had some status amongst the outer sect disciples, and perhaps he might be able to restrain Zhou Xian. "We'll go look for senior brother Gu now. Don't worry, junior sister Yi." Then, he immediately turned around and sprinted away without waiting for Yi Qingtang's reply. Chapter 204. Yi Qingtang saw how Qin Huan ran away so quickly and was at a loss of whether to cry or laugh. If Zhou Xian was so easy to persuade, Gu Yanxiu would have gone to settle the matter right when he heard the news. Yi Qingtang could not stop Qin Huan and could only let him go. Yi Qingtang more or less knew what Zhou Xian was thinking of. There were often deaths when disciples were out on missions. Even if they accidentally lost their lives in a battle, the sect would not investigate too deeply into what happened. Yi Qingtang returned to the room with that thought. It was rare that Lin Long was also in the room today. Yi Qingtang nodded at Lin Long, she saw her, and then looked at the silver wolf which was sitting below the window. When the wolf met Yi Qingtang's eyes, something seemed to flash across its green orbs, and it immediately turned away before Yi Qingtang sensed it. Yi Qingtang always felt that her little baby was too shy. Every time she massaged it, it always fell out with her. She was about to caress the wolf, but Lin Long, who had always been silent, suddenly called Yi Qingtang. "Junior sister Yi." A rather aloof female voice sounded from behind Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang stopped in her tracks and looked at Lin Long, who suddenly said something. "Senior sister Lin, is there anything?" Yi Qingtang usually did not spend a long time in the dorm, and even if she returned, she was mostly with the silver wolf. Lin Long had an aloof personality, and the two of them did not really interact with each other. The only time they talked was the day when Yi Qingtang just moved into the dorm. Lin Long had an indifferent look on her face. She stood up from her table and placed a file in Yi Qingtang's hands. Yi Qingtang looked at Lin Long a little confusedly. When she took a look at the file, she actually realized that it was the file for a sect mission. Why did she suddenly pass her this sect mission file? "Return it back to me before tomorrow." Lin Long returned to her seat and took up a book to read after leaving Yi Qingtang with such an unclear sentence. Yi Qingtang was really at a loss and did not know what was Lin Long trying to do, but she still flipped through the file in her hand. And this surprised her immediately. At the last part of the file, there was a line written clearly. Participants: Zhou Xian, Lin Long, Yi Qingtang. Apart from these three names, there were two other foreign disciples' names. Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up. Although she was looking at Lin Long's cold side profile, her heart was warm. Lin Long was also in Zhou Xian's sect mission and probably already noticed that something was off. Thus, she chose to hand this file to Yi Qingtang. While Yi Qingtang was not afraid of any difficulties that Zhou Xian would make, it was inevitable that she would fall for Zhou Xian's schemes if she did not familiarize herself with the mission contents before going on the mission. Lin Long's move indeed resolved Yi Qingtang's urgent worries. Yi Qingtang's grip on the file tightened as she spoke to Lin Long gently. "Thank you, senior sister Lin." Lin Long looked at Yi Qingtang without emotion and responded with an almost unnoticeable nod. Then, she returned her focus on the book in her hand. Yi Qingtang immediately walked to her table with a file in her hand, without forgetting to pinch the wolf's ears, which caused the wolf to shoot an annoyed glare at her. Yi Qingtang chuckled after having her way, and then focused on the mission file. The mission which the sect appointed to Zhou Xian, and the rest was to investigate the tragic case of the extermination of a family. In this 1 month, she already felt that her spirit root had gone through drastic changes quietly. Using the time when no one noticed, Yi Qingtang turned around and revealed the spirit root in her palm. A light shone. At that instant, the spirit root in her palm was covered by a large patch of orange, and there was only a tiny trace of red at the tip of the spirit root. Yi Qingtang saw that the spirit root was about to be upgraded to an orange color, and happiness filled her heart. She closed her hands, and the image of the spirit root faded away. A steadfast expression emerged in her smiling eyes. The sect was surging with spirit energy, and the rate of growth of her spirit root here was way faster than that when she was in Lin Town. In at most half a month, she was very certain that she could raise her spirit root to an orange spirit root. Yi Qingtang's eyes twinkled. She, who was focused on upgrading her spirit root, did not notice that when she revealed her spirit root just now, the silver wolf in the corner was watching everything. When it saw that the color of Yi Qingtang's spirit root was about to turn orange, a light flashed across its eyes silently. Chapter 206. The night was silent. The faint moonlight entered from the window and was cast on the silver wolf's body. In the silence, the silver wolf quietly stood up, and its slender limbs allowed it to jump up onto the bed easily. Its deep eyes landed on Yi Qingtang's face. A small black ball of fog emerged out from Yi Qingtang's chest. It wriggled a little out from the fluffy blanket and looked agitatedly at the mighty wolf above it. "Would-be father, have you finally come round? Are you finally going to sneak an attack on Mother in the middle of the night?" The little black ball was so excited that its voice trembled unconsciously. It had already been some time since its would-be father came to its mother's side. However, the wolf just remained at a side without saying anything the whole day and completely did not know how to get closer to its mother, which really worried it. The silver wolf swept a cold glare at the little black ball, which immediately hid in Yi Qingtang's arms. "I am saying this all for your own good. Otherwise, when will you be able to have a baby with Mother?" mumbled the little black ball softly. The silver wolf's gaze sharpened, but when its eyes landed on Yi Qingtang, the sharpness in its gaze quietly turned into a complicated expression. When it looked at Yi Qingtang's hands, which were lying outside the blanket, its brow was slightly raised. It could not help but recall the image of its body being carelessly touched all over by this pair of hands in the past few days. The silver wolf slightly shook its head and completely cleared that depressing image out of its mind. It slowly raised its paw and placed it on Yi Qingtang's abdomen lightly. A faint light from the silver wolf's paw slowly passed through the blanket and into Yi Qingtang's abdomen. "Oh, would-be father, is this a special copulation method?" The little black ball secretly peeked out from the blanket, and its eyes were dazzled with stars when it saw the silver wolf's affectionate action. The silver wolf froze as it cast a cold glance at the little black ball that said shocking things, wondering if it should squeeze the little black ball to death with a paw. Perhaps it was because of the fact that the silver wolf stiffened and the strength it exerted changed. Yi Qingtang suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She opened her eyes sleepily and looked at the silver wolf standing on its bed with sleep in her eyes. "Oh, The silver wolf did not expect Yi Qingtang to suddenly wake up and immediately froze. However, don't play around. Tired, Yi Qingtang, who was still drowsy from her sleep, did not even notice what the silver wolf had done to her. Her hands stretched out to hug and press down on the silver wolf's head, while her slim legs flipped out from the blanket and laid across the silver wolf's body. With both her hands and legs, she directly hugged the furry silver wolf in her arms and even rubbed her head on the silver wolf's face in extreme satisfaction. Be good. Let's sleep. The silver wolf was hugged tightly by Yi Qingtang's octopus-like position. With a slight trace of movement, Yi Qingtang, who was in her sleep, hugged it even more tightly instead. The silver wolf could not do anything. The little black ball still wanted to take a peek, but was hit by the silver wolf's paw. The silver wolf looked at Yi Qingtang's sleeping face, which was close at hand, and let out an almost inaudible sigh. It finally closed its eyes, and its body, intentionally or unintentionally, leaned against Yi Qingtang. The little black ball, which hid back into the heart of the demon god, trembled in excitement. Its would-be father and mother were finally sleeping on the same bed. Mother will be able to have a baby very soon, heh. So exciting. Chapter 207. The preparation time for a sect mission was very short, and they had to set off the next morning. When Yi Qingtang woke up, she saw that the silver wolf, which was hugged tightly by her, was looking at her with a numb expression. Yi Qingtang was a little shocked. But very quickly, Yi Qingtang returned to her senses and changed her clothes nimbly. And that scene was on full display in front of a certain someone. The silver wolf's lips twitched slightly, and it instinctively looked away, although it acted to look at her carelessly. Too skinny. A little chubbier would be better. Yi Qingtang did not even notice the silver wolf's thoughts and took her things after changing. She patted the silver wolf's head and said, "Wait for me to return obediently. I will ask Senior Brother Qin to help me feed you." After that, Yi Qingtang left the room without waiting for the silver wolf to react. She did think of bringing the silver wolf on the mission with her, but because this mission was specially prepared for her, Yi Qingtang did not dare to risk bringing the silver wolf. After leaving her dorm, Yi Qingtang only felt that her body was exceptionally light today, and that the abdomen area where her spirit root was at was emitting a faint warmth. It was a very interesting feeling. Could it be that the spirit root is about to break through? Yi Qingtang was very curious as well. She obviously felt that she still needed half a month's time, but why was it that her spirit root had traces of a breakthrough after just one night of sleep? Without thinking anymore, Yi Qingtang immediately went to look for Qin Huan to ask him to look after the silver wolf on her behalf during this period of time. Afterward, she left the sect. Outside the sect, many teams were already gathered. Some teams had already set off. Yi Qingtang saw Lin Long's figure from a distance away and immediately walked in that direction. "Senior Sister Lin," Yi Qingtang greeted. Lin Long nodded slightly, and her eyes stopped on Yi Qingtang for a while. She had a feeling that the aura around Yi Qingtang was a little different today, but she could not point out the difference at the moment. Right at that instant, Yi Qingtang heard noisy footsteps and a sarcastic voice. "Senior Brother Zhou, why must you bring a useless new disciple on this mission? I think that this group of new disciples don't know anything at all. Even if we bring them, they will just be a burden. How about you rethink it?" A disciple who looked about 20 years old was beside Zhou Xian, and he mumbled in dissatisfaction. Zhou Xian came right after. Other than the person who spoke just now, there was another disciple who was appointed this mission beside Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyes quickly landed on Yi Qingtang as though he completely did not notice what the junior brother beside him meant. He said with a smile, "She would require a certain amount of training as a new disciple anyway. Since we are senior brothers, we should take care of her. Moreover, this little junior sister's spirit root is not good. If I don't invite her, other new disciples might not be willing to go on a mission together with a red spirit root." Red spirit root? It can't be? Those two disciples were shocked when they heard the three words, red spirit root. A new disciple was already useless enough, and it turned out she was still a red spirit root? Was that not the same as a useless piece of trash? Zhou Xian's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it was enough for Yi Qingtang and Lin Long to hear clearly. When Zhou Xian finished his sentence, he already appeared in front of Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang's lips curled into a sneer. Really? Thank you for worrying, senior brother Zhou. Chapter 208. Zhou Xian chuckled. Of course. Since we are from the same sect, I will definitely be worried about you. A cold light thoughtlessly flashed across his eyes when he finished speaking. However, the other two disciples became even more dissatisfied upon hearing Zhou Xian's words. Sect missions were different from rewarded missions. If rewarded missions were a failure, the disciples would lose some time at most and would not receive any other punishments. However, if it was a mission appointed by the sect, it had to be completed. Otherwise, the disciples would be reprimanded by the warden and punished correspondingly once they returned to the sect. Thus, participating disciples were exceptionally meticulous when they were doing sect missions, as they were feared that a failed mission would negatively affect themselves and the sect. Those two disciples sized up Yi Qingtang. Apart from her beautiful face, they despised everything else about Yi Qingtang. Junior sister Yi, it's been a month since you entered the sect. Have you been cultivating hard? Are you familiar with the basics of the Xintian swordplay already? A disciple asked meanly. He did not care about Zhou Xian's reasons for adding this new disciple into the team and was only concerned about whether he could complete his mission. The young girl before him looked weak and did not look like she had the ability to complete the mission. Even if such a person followed them, not putting in any effort was the greatest contribution already. If she was a hindrance in their investigation, it would really be a big problem. How could Yi Qingtang not hear the harshness in the person's words? She was very clear that all of this was intentionally created by Zhou Xian. These disciples may not know about Zhou Xian's objectives, but they hated her because of Zhou Xian's words. Even if she had an accidental death in the mission, these two disciples would probably not even ask about it. Yi Qingtang sneered in her heart, and a sharp look flashed across her eyes as she looked at Zhou Xian's face, of which he concealed his mocking expression. I am asking you a question. Did you hear me? As a junior sister, how dare you ignore a senior brother's question? Do you have any manners? That disciple who did not hear Yi Qingtang's reply immediately frowned unhappily and instinctively wanted to grab her shoulder. A smile passed by Zhou Xian's eyes when he saw the disciple making things difficult for Yi Qingtang. These two junior brothers were specially selected out from the outer sect by him. They had an arrogant and self-conceited nature. Even if he did not openly do anything to Yi Qingtang would already be troubled just by the two's verbal attacks. However, as that disciple stretched his hand out, Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up. Her eyes were obviously smiling, but the coldness in her eyes caused his hand to freeze in midair. He did not know why either, but he felt as though he fell into an ice cellar when he was stared at by her. Senior brother, you're caring too much, Yi Qingtang scoffed. If you don't want to do the mission, then get lost quickly. Stop wasting time here. Lin Long, who had remained silent all along, suddenly walked up to stand before Yi Qingtang and looked at the troublemaking disciples coldly. That disciple saw Lin Long standing in front of him with a cold expression and was taken aback immediately. Fear flashed across his eyes as he said rather guiltily, Senior Sister Lin. Chapter 209. Lin Long's sudden speech shocked Zhou Xian, who was waiting for the drama to ensue. He stood up and spoke in a tone different from the arrogant one he was using when talking to Yi Qingtang. Junior sister Lin is right. It is time for us to set off now as well. The other teams have already left. If we continue being like this here, we would really waste time. Zhou Xian spoke so righteously, but little did anyone know that everything that happened before was all part of his plan. The only thing that surprised him was that Lin Long, who had always been cold and aloof, suddenly spoke up for Yi Qingtang. Lin Long looked at Zhou Xian coldly and then turned around to walk down the path to heaven. With Lin Long's warning, the other disciples did not dare to waste any more time then and walked down the path to heaven after giving Yi Qingtang an annoyed look. Zhou Xian walked slightly slower. After the three of them were a distance away, he walked past Yi Qingtang and said in a volume that only the two of them could hear, "Yi Qingtang, I remember your kindness for treating my younger brother, Zhou Chu, that way previously." Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes, and her lips tugged up into a seeming smile. "So, that good-for-nothing Zhou Chu is actually senior brother Zhou's younger brother." Once he heard the words good-for-nothing, Zhou Xian's face darkened immediately. He glared at Yi Qingtang with fury in his eyes. "Good-for-nothing? You are a red spirit root trash. What right do you have to call others good-for-nothing?" Yi Qingtang's smile deepened. She tilted her head as she casually glanced down at the sword hung on Zhou Xian's waist. "What a pity. Your younger brother can't even crawl up after being beaten by me. A red spirit root? You." Zhou Xian's expression changed. Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up, and her clear eyes directly met with Zhou Xian's. "He is clearly a disciple who cultivated for many years in the Fist faction but had to lay in bed for days after being beaten by me. A new disciple who just entered the sect for a few days. Senior brother Zhou, in your opinion, how would I dare to snatch the title of being a good-for-nothing from your younger brother?" Zhou Xian's face turned blue. He originally thought that Yi Qingtang would not dare to be too insolent after he established an imposing air for himself. Yet, it was as though this woman's mouth was full of poison, and every sentence she said hit him right in the heart. "Yi Qingtang, the days ahead are long. Don't say that I didn't remind you. There are many dangers in sect missions. You better take good care of yourself." Zhou Xian left her a sentence coldly and walked down the path to heaven, unwilling to waste time talking to Yi Qingtang, who had the gift of gab. Yi Qingtang looked at Zhou Xian's back view with a seeming smile and looked down to hide the murderous expression which emerged in her eyes for a second. Take good care of yourself? Only that, the one who needed to take good care of themselves was not her but Zhou Xian. A murderous smile hung on her lips as she walked down the path to heaven casually. How could a devil from hell be offended by an ordinary person as he pleased? At the same time, after Yi Qingtang just left, Qin Huan remembered what Yi Qingtang entrusted him with and prepared a plate full of beef as an offering to the wolf which Yi Qingtang baited. However, once Qin Huan walked into Yi Qingtang's room, he was immediately dumbfounded to see an empty room. There was not a trace of the wolf. Where is the wolf? In a moment, Qin Huan felt as though the sky was going to fall. Yi Qingtang just left, but the silver wolf disappeared already? If Yi Qingtang returned after finishing her mission, wouldn't he? Chapter 210. Qin Huan went berserk. Without caring about the beef in his hands, he sprinted away while screaming, "Senior brother Gu, this is bad. Junior sister Yes Wolf disappeared. Help me to find it, please." At the same time, a tall man was pacing up and down the woods at the foot of the cliff below Xinling's sect. Worry and anxiety were written all over his face. "This Lady Yi, she kidnapped His Highness just like that. How can I rescue His Highness without alarming the Xinling sect? Lady Yi, you are being a bandit, do you know?" Musu lingered outside Xinling's sect for half a month and was about to go insane. There was only one way to the sect, which was the path to heaven. Although he was completely able to fly up to Xinling's sect on his own, doing that would definitely alarm everyone in Xinling's sect. Musu had a special identity, and if he suddenly appeared in Xinling's sect, there would be a big stir in Xinling's sect. Then, it would take him a lot of effort to find an excuse to deal with those oldies in Xinling's sect, much less be able to search for someone. There was no way he could tell the Xinling sect people that the noble and holy palace lord of the Antiquity Palace was forcefully abducted by their outer sect disciple, right? And he was even being abducted in a freaking animal form. If such word spread, all those old elders in Xinling sect would definitely be shocked. Moreover, if His Highness' identity was exposed, there was no doubt that His Highness would behead him. On one hand, he wanted to bring His Highness back, but on the other, he could not let anyone find out about it. Musu was so worried that he dropped a bunch of hair, yet he still had not found a reliable method. Thus, he could only stand around and wait for His Highness to leave Xinling's sect on his own. After all, with His Highness' skill, Xinling sect's defense and perception were as good as non-existent. However, half a month passed. Musu felt that hope was getting increasingly slimmer. Just as Musu was weighed down with worry, he suddenly saw a group of Xianling sect disciples coming down from the path to heaven and was shocked when he saw a familiar face walking past him. Yi Qingtang slowly walked down the path to heaven, got on a horse that was already prepared for them, and left with a few other Xianling sect disciples. Lady Yi has left? Musu watched Yi Qingtang leave and trembled in shock as he did not even see a silver wolf by Yi Qingtang's side. Lady Yi abducted His Highness, but why was she going out alone now? Where was His Highness? Your Highness, you must know better. You must not be reluctant to come back after being abducted to be the wife of a bandit chief. Even if you want to woo Lady Yi, you don't have to do it now, Musu mumbled perplexedly. Before he finished his sentence, he felt a gush of cold air from behind him. Wife of a bandit chief? A rather low voice suddenly sounded behind Musu. Once Musu heard that voice, happiness filled him. He turned around and saw Han Songming, whom he had been away from for a long time, standing behind him in his attractive human form. Musu almost burst out crying there and then. Your Highness, you're back. Musu wiped a bitter tear away and was only this close from hugging Han Kangming's leg. However, there was a strange look on Han Kangming's face. His cold eyes slowly looked at Musu, and he said softly, "What did you say just now?" Chapter 211. With that said, Musu's legs suddenly turned jelly. What did he say? He actually said that His Highness was a wife of a bandit chief, and it was even heard by His Highness. There was no way he would get by the days. Your Highness, listen. Listen to my explanation. Musu really was about to cry as he looked at Han Songming. Had he known that His Highness would appear at that time, he would definitely not dare to ramble on randomly, even if everyone lent him their courage. Your Highness, why did you not appear earlier nor later, but right at that time? Did you really not appear to torture me on purpose? Musu was still thinking about how to make His Highness pardon him from death, but he noticed that Han Kangming's eyes did not even stay on him at all. They looked right over him and at the little figure which was riding away in the opposite direction. Is His Highness looking at Lady Yi? Musu's heart shook. He faintly sensed that the eyes that His Highness were looking at Yi Qingtang with were a little different from their initial coldness. Could it be that, towards Lady Yi, His Highness really developed feelings after spending time together in this half a month? Your Highness, are you feeling better? Musu asked cautiously. Han Songming turned into animal form previously because of the surge of the aura of the evil. Now that he could return back into a human form, it seemed that there should not be any big problems anymore. It is all right, Han Songming replied. Musu heaved a sigh of relief, but did not dare to speak carelessly again, as he was afraid that Han Songming would behead him once he remembered what he said about being the wife of the bandit chief. On the other side, Yi Qingtang was on their way to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village with Lin Long and the rest. After a long day of traveling, the group stopped their journey as night fell. They lit a fire in a forest by the road and rested. Senior Brother Zhou, the village master of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, is skilled, and there are a large number of highly skilled people in the village protecting the village. How could it disappear just like that? A disciple could not help but question after pondering about the case. Zhou Xin replied, "This is hard to say. With over 300 people dying in a night, it was impossible for the surrounding people to not know of such a big commotion. Furthermore, that entire area is under the influence of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. If there was anything, the people outside the mountain village would definitely not sit still and do nothing. However, the report to the sect did not mention this. I think, perhaps the other party might have poisoned them in secret." Over 300 people were killed in a night in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, and it could be said that the amount of blood within the village could form a river. Yet, no one outside the sect realized it, and this was a little strange. People nearby Spirit Condensation Mountain Village had investigated the matter before as well, but there was still no clue. Hence, they had no choice but to request Xinling's sect for help. Could it be a vendetta? Can't be sure. Zhou Xian and the two other disciples chatted by the fire. Lin Long had a quiet personality, and thus, she only sat at a side while reading the file without saying anything at all. And because of what Zhou Xian deliberately said previously, the other two disciples disliked Yi Qingtang. On the journey, they were unwilling to speak to Yi Qingtang and treated her as though she did not exist. During the conversation, Zhou Xian purposely looked up casually at Yi Qingtang, who made her own fire, and his lips formed into a sneer. Yi Qingtang, cherish your limited days left. Once we reach Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, I will bury you together with those 300 dead souls in the village. Chapter 212. On the journey, Zhou Xian made things difficult for Yi Qingtang both covertly and overtly, but never really attacked her. He merely used words to lead the two disciples who were dissatisfied with Yi Qingtang's spirit root to give Yi Qingtang some attitude, although she completely ignored their sarcastic and discriminating gazes. Very obviously, Zhou Xian did not plan to attack Yi Qingtang on the road. Although they left Xinling's sect, killing off a fellow disciple would require a safe and sound opportunity. Zhou Xian was not willing to let others have something on him. Thus, his target had been locked on the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village from the very start. There was the main field for him to deal with Yi Qingtang. After an arduous journey, the five people finally reached Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Plants were flattened on a tall mountain, and there were houses situated from the foot of the mountain all the way to the peak. This entire mountain was under Spirit Condensation Mountain Village's possession, and everyone who resided there was a part of forces affiliated to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. With one look, one could see that there were hundreds of families living there. Yi Qingtang and the rest had just reached the foot of the mountain, but their Xinling sect uniform attracted the attention of the people nearby the mountain village. In no time, an old man and a handsome young man approached them quickly. Sorry for not coming ahead to welcome you, as we were unaware of your arrival. Do pardon us. That elderly lifted his clothes and knelt before the five teenagers on horses without caring about seniority. The young man beside the elderly immediately followed the elderly and knelt with his head hung low as well. Similarly, the surrounding citizens knelt down earnestly in awe and respect on both sides of the Xinling sect disciples. The reverence of a sect was simply not what a normal person could offend. In the eyes of ordinary citizens, those who entered a sect were mighty figures standing on top of the clouds, holy and could not be infringed. Zhou Xian and the rest had been in the sect for a long time and were already used to such a grand greeting. This was how noble a sect disciple was in the eyes of normal people. Moreover, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was originally reliant on Xinling's sect, and, thus, the people were even more reverent towards them. Rise. We are ordered here to investigate the tragedy in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Which of you is the current person in charge? Zhou Xian, who was sitting on a horse, glanced across the group of people before him. That old man slowly rose and stepped forward. I was originally the apothecary of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village and am considered the person in charge of this place right now. This is, he raised his hand and pointed to the silent young man beside him. This is the adopted stepson of the village master, Wu Zheng. We have been waiting for you all for a long time. Please do us, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village, justice. Of course. Zhou Xian replied proudly. You all must be worn out from the journey. We have already prepared food and drinks. You all can dismount and rest for a while understanding the situation here, the apothecary said respectfully. Zhou Xian nodded slightly. After exchanging a look with the other disciples, he immediately dismounted and headed to their destination with the company of the apothecary and Wu Zheng. Yi Qingtang walked beside Lin Long at the tail of the team and looked at the surrounding citizens' faces casually. Perhaps it was because a bloody massacre happened. Fear and uneasiness were prevalent in the citizens' eyes, though they faked a calm front. Only after they saw Yi Qingtang and the others did that look of uneasiness fade away slowly, though their ash-pale faces were enough to prove the trepidation they felt over the past few days. Chapter 212. 1. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. 2. The apothecary brought the 5 of them to their destination. The uneasy citizens lingered outside the door and were not willing to leave. Their fear seemed to finally dissipate only when they were standing close to these sect disciples. What exactly happened to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village? Zhou Xian questioned straight to the point after sitting down. Although he wanted to make use of this chance to get rid of Yiqingtang, he did not forget the mission he was tasked to as well. Otherwise, even if he killed Yiqingtang, he would still be punished by the sect should he not complete the mission. Furthermore, he did not think that killing Yiqingtang would be difficult. After hearing the question, the apothecary could not help but sigh heavily. This is a long story. That day was our village master's 50th birthday celebration. There were many guests that night, and the celebration finally ended at midnight. After a whole day of labor, everyone was tired by nighttime and went to rest after sending the guests off. However, no one would have thought that an accident happened that very night. Yiqingtang listened from aside quietly. What the apothecary said was the same as the information mentioned in the sect file, and there were no special clues. Can you bring us to look at the situation in Spirit Condensation Mountain Village first? Zhou Xian wanted to continue questioning, yet Yiqingtang suddenly requested to take a look at the scene of the accident. He frowned displeasingly, but on second thought, they had to inspect the scene as well. Thus, he did not say anything. The apothecary replied, "Sure. We did not dare to touch anything in the mountain village, so that you all can inspect the scene closely when you all are here." Then, the apothecary stood up and led the group towards Spirit Condensation Mountain Village along with Wu Zheng. Zhou Xian and the other 2 disciples took a step first and walked at the front. Rather, it was Lin Long who, intentionally or unintentionally, walked at a speed which coincidentally matched with Yiqingtang's pace and was walking right beside Yiqingtang. Yiqingtang had noticed this long ago when they were still on the road. Senior sister Lin always instinctively maintained the same pace as her, and even if they were in a hurry, senior sister Lin was never too far away from her. Although Yiqingtang did not talk much to this cold senior sister during the journey, Yiqingtang noticed Lin Long's subtle actions. Yiqingtang had a feeling that Lin Long seemed to have sensed that Zhou Xian was going to harm Yiqingtang, which caused her to keep maintaining a close distance with her on purpose. To this, Yiqingtang felt an inexpressible warmth. In her previous life, Lin Long was also like this. She didn't talk much normally and had a detached personality but would lend a hand at critical times. As she pondered, they had already reached the main entrance of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Before entering the door to the mountain village, they saw large patches of blood flowing out from under the door. The blood had already dried, but the strong blood smell traveled into their noses along with the wind. Contrasting against the black door, the blood which seeped under the door was like a giant tongue of a demon. This is it. However, please be mentally prepared. The situation inside is not too good, reminded the apothecary before he opened the door. Zhou Xian frowned a little, obviously not putting the apothecary's words to heart. It was merely a bloody scene. He had gone on many missions before. How would he have seen little of such situations? "Open the door," Zhou Xian said. Chapter 212. 2. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. 3. The apothecary hesitated for a moment and finally nodded at Wu Zheng beside him. Wu Zheng went forward quietly and pushed open the tightly shut door. The moment the door was pushed open, a strong blood smell greeted them. The smell was so intense that one could faint from it. The scene inside made the calm Zhou Xian shudder and breathe with difficulty. Hundreds of heads were piled in the courtyard of Spirit Condensation Mountain Village like a tower of skulls. Crimson dried blood hardened on the almost decomposed skulls. Over 300 skulls were piled in the courtyard so glaringly. Crimson blood covered the entire courtyard as though a demonic blood-colored flower was in full bloom, while the hundreds of skulls formed the core of the flower of death. Along with the intense smell of death in the air, the image was imprinted in everyone's eyes. In an instant, Zhou Xian and the rest turned pale. Even if he knew that Spirit Condensation Mountain Village would be gory, he did not expect that skulls would be piled up like mountains. On the decomposed skulls, worms were crawling around inside the rotten flesh, while eyeballs that were left half-eaten by crows hung in the eye sockets, as though they were still looking at the group at the door. It was freaky and twisted. The mixture of the rotting smell and blood smell caused one's stomach to churn. Blarg! A Xinling sect disciple vomited at the smell. Zhou Xian's face lost all color. Only until then did he finally realize why the apothecary added that one sentence. Even for him, a self-praised, experienced, and knowledgeable person, vomit was at the back of his throat when he saw the sight. The other disciple's face turned green as well, and it was evident that he was on the verge of puking from disgust. Even Lin Long's face turned white. Among all of them, only Yi Qingtang's expression was the same as usual as she took a calm look at the tragic, hell-looking place. We were worried that we would spoil the clues, so we have never touched the things here, the apothecary said softly after seeing everyone's expression. After Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was washed in blood in a night, they did not even dare to move anything in the village and only waited for the Xinling sect to send people over to investigate. Thus, they did not touch anything in the village, and the place remained the way it was initially. Moreover, they had already used some powder which could prevent the corpses from decomposing rapidly, though the fact that they had decomposed could not be covered, and the powder was only able to stall for time. Zhou Xian faked a calm front and nodded, but the tightly frowned brows revealed his emotions at that instant. Do all these skulls belong to Spirit Condensation Mountain Village? Yes. The apothecary nodded and raised a hand, pointing to the skull at the top of the mountain of skulls. That skull belongs to our village master, Wu Chengze. In the layer below it, those skulls belong to the wife of the village master and the 3 young village masters. Zhou Xian did not want to look at those frightening skulls anymore, but it was not convenient for him to show it. After all, these still required to be investigated. Suddenly, Zhou Xian looked another way and at Yi Qingtang, whose expression was the same as usual. Chapter 213. Junior Sister Yi. Zhou Xian suddenly called Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang lifted her eyes slightly. Zhou Xian's face was pale as he was disgusted by the skulls. Yi Qingtang's mouth tilted. Junior Sister Yi, this is your first time attending a sect mission. I will not risk your life for some dangerous tasks, but you need some training. The skulls here may contain some clues of the tragedy at the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. Thus, you must check through every single skull here carefully to look for clues, Zhou Xian said in a noble way. It seemed that he really picked the best task for Yi Qingtang wholeheartedly. The 2 disciples sneered as Zhou Xian finished his words. Frankly speaking, if they took a few more looks at the rotten skulls, they would be vomiting. They would never touch the skull for investigation. Furthermore, the skulls had decayed to the extent that there were little or no clues left at all. They definitely did not want to waste energy on this kind of task. However, they were delighted if Yi Qingtang could take the task. Lin Long frowned upon hearing Zhou Xian's words. Yi Qingtang clearly noticed what a hypocrite Zhou Xian was. Surprisingly, she did not reject Zhou Xian's proposal. She shrugged her shoulder and agreed. Okay. No one expected that Yi Qingtang would agree with that so easily. Even an adult male might not be able to face the rotten skull tower without fear. How could a young lady be capable of such a feat? However, Yi Qingtang agreed without hesitation. Zhou Xian was expecting Yi Qingtang to reject his proposal. His mouth twitched, but when he remembered that Yi Qingtang would spend her time with the rotten skulls, he felt more relieved. Thank you for the trouble, Junior Sister Yi. Zhou Xian faked a smile and looked towards the apothecary. There are only the skulls of the 300 people from the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village here. Where are their bodies? The corpses are scattered around the village. I will show you the way. The apothecary answered. Zhou Xian lifted his eyebrow slightly and took a glance at Yi Qingtang. Okay then, he said. Junior Village Master, "I'm afraid you have to accompany this lady here to identify these skulls," the apothecary said towards Wu Zheng. The handsome young man who remained silent nodded without any expressions. The apothecary then led Zhou Xian and the rest to other places in the village. Lin Long wanted to stay, but Yi Qingtang shook her head. Lin Long paused for a moment and followed up with Zhou Xian. Yi Qingtang chuckled as Zhou Xian and the rest left. How could she not know Zhou Xian's intentions? However, Zhou Xian wanted to scare her with these rotten skulls, but he would be disappointed soon. What kind of bloody scene had she not witnessed before in the tortures of her previous life? She even spent days under rotten corpses to hide from the killings. How could she be scared of a few hundred skulls? Such a joke. Yi Qingtang withdrew her sight. She did not bother about Zhou Xian's little trick. She only cared about the tragedy at the Spirit Condensation Mountain village. In her previous life, the tragedy remained unsolved after 200 years, and this was Yi Qingtang's first sect mission. It would not be good news for a new disciple to fail their first mission. Chapter 214. Though the skulls were sprinkled with powder that delayed the decaying process, the degree of decaying of the flesh was still very obvious. Furthermore, the skulls were exposed in the open yard, and the crows that were attracted by the decaying smell pecked the skulls. Among the flesh, pus that came from the decaying matter had covered the entire skulls, making them look extremely disgusting. However, Yi Qingtang seemed to not notice the disgusting scene. She walked to the skull tower directly and took down the top skull. The moment the skull was removed, the whole skull tower seemed to experience severe vibrations. The 300 skulls rolled down and fell beside Yi Qingtang's feet. Yi Qingtang was surrounded by the hundreds of rotten skulls within a second. Wu Zhang, who remained silent throughout, shivered slightly. The horrifying scene was hard to look steadily at. However, when Wu Zhang looked up, he was shocked by the young lady who seemed to be standing in a scene of carnage. The young lady stood among the flesh with the sunlight shining on her. There was no trace of fear on her delicate face. Her eyes were lowered to stare at the rotten skull in her hands. When the sunlight reached her long eyelashes, she appeared so mysterious. She seemed to be smiling with her lips tilted slightly. It seemed like she was holding a piece of jewelry instead of a disgusting skull. Yi Qingtang flipped the skull in her hand to have a view of all sides. She just allowed the pus to drop through her fingers freely. She scanned through the skull that belonged to the village master Wu Chengze. Wu Zheng had never met such a young lady before. She could still remain that calm in front of the bloody scenes. Yi Qingtang stared at the skull for quite a while. She suddenly looked up and asked Wu Zheng, who was stunned at the side. "This belongs to Wu Chengze?" Wu Zheng pulled himself out of astonishment and nodded slightly. Yi Qingtang did not ask further. She just took a look at the skull again and left it at the side. She then picked up another skull. "Are you the adopted son of the village master?" Yi Qingtang checked through the skull on her hand and asked questions that seemed to be irrelevant.
Yes.
Wu Jing answered respectfully. He had to be polite and respectful in front of a sect disciple, even if he was the master's own son. "When did you come to the Spirit Condensation Mountain village?" Yi Qingtang seemed to be asking Wu Zheng, but her sight never left the skulls. Wu Zheng looked down and said, "When I was still an infant, father brought me back to the village. Where were you when the tragedy happened?" Yi Qingtang looked towards Wu Zheng. Based on her memory from her previous life, the whole force collapsed after the tragedy, but she had never heard of people mentioning about the adopted son Wu Zheng. "Father asked me to send the young lady of the Dongyue family back. She came for a birthday celebration," Wu Zheng replied. Chapter 215. The night before the tragedy was Wu Qing's 50-years-old birthday celebration. Many guests came, and the celebration lasted until midnight. The Dongyue family that Wu Zheng mentioned was another prestigious family nearby. There was a rumor that the two families had agreed on the marriage alliance. Yi Qingtang nodded and did not speak anymore. It seemed that all the questions before were just some random thoughts. After that, besides asking Wu Zheng about the origin of the skulls, there was no further conversation. Before the sunset, Zhou Xian and the rest who walked through the entire village were all very pale. The Spirit Condensation Mountain village was not small, but the 300 corpses were everywhere in the village. Everywhere that they could see was covered by blood. The decaying smell made them feel like they were walking in hell. Senior Brother Zhou, the situation of the Spirit Condensation Mountain village seems to be more complicated than what we thought, a disciple who vomited many times said. Zhou Xian nodded in acknowledgement. Everything they saw today was bloody, but there were no useful clues at all. Everyone's head in the Spirit Condensation Mountain village was chopped off, and the wound was very neat. There were no traces of fighting beside the corpses. It's not revenge. If it were revenge, how could they just succumb so easily? Zhou Xian contemplated for a while and looked towards the Lin Long, who was walking at the back. Junior sister Lin, did you discover anything? Lin Long shook her head. Zhou Xian frowned and felt a bit annoyed. How could they accomplish the mission without any clues? There are no clues here. What about the skulls? One of the disciples said. Zhou Xian was stunned for a while, and then remembered that Yi Qingtang was still in that mountain of skulls. He sneered and said, "We shall see junior sister Yes investigation results. What can she find out? I don't think she will be able to find any clues at all. I suppose that she was terrified by the skulls and did not even dare to touch the skulls. Senior Brother Zhou, Yi Qingtang is just a burden. She can't do anything besides finding more troubles for us." One of the disciples twitched his mouth and did not expect any results from Yi Qingtang. It's her first time attending a sect mission. We should tolerate her even if she creates some trouble. We are all her senior brothers and senior sisters, so we must look after her, Zhou Xian said with a strong sense of righteousness. Senior Brother Zhou, you are too kind to her. She did not feel grateful to your kindness at all, another disciple said coldly. Zhou Xian did not say much. He just waved his hand. Don't mention it anymore. We shall go check out the situation at the yard. In the eyes of the two disciples, Zhou Xian was taking care of Yi Qingtang in all perspectives. Even if Yi Qingtang died, they would not find Zhou Xian suspicious at all. And this was what Zhou Xian wanted. The two disciples were obviously misled by Zhou Xian's fake kindness and looked down on Yi Qingtang, who only possessed a red spirit root. The group of people walked into the yard and waited to see Yi Qingtang's pale and panicking face. However, they were shocked by the view in front of them when they reached the yard. Chapter 216. There was an odd harmony in the bloody yard. The skulls that were stacked up previously were now arranged neatly in a few lines on the ground. All of them were facing the same direction without any flaws. It seemed that countless corpses were buried underground, leaving only the skulls above the ground. Those pairs of empty eyes stared straight at the direction where Zhou Xian came from. The disciple who almost vomited previously was shocked by the scene. His legs trembled and almost fell to the ground. What the hell? Yi Qingtang, who was wiping off the dirt on her hand, raised her head when she heard the scream. There seemed to be a faint smile on her delicate face, and her eyes were half closed, looking towards Zhou Xian and the rest. My fellow senior brothers and senior sisters, how's the investigation? Yi Qingtang asked in a lazy voice. Her tone seemed to be filled with slight sarcasm. Zhou Xian was stunned when he saw Yi Qingtang standing there and smiling to him. She did not seem to be affected at all. What was Yi Qingtang planning to do? Was she really a 15-year-old young lady? How could a young lady remain so calm in front of all the rotten skulls? If it was other normal people, they might be scared to death. Besides Zhou Xian, the other two disciples who were unhappy with Yi Qingtang now stared at her in horror. Zhou Xian suppressed his astonishment. He did not answer Yi Qingtang directly. Instead, he scanned through the skulls and said, Junior Sister Yi, what is this for? The people of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village died mysteriously. Even though you are still playful at your age, you should not play with the skulls of the dead people. Zhou Xian sounded like he was trying to educate Yi Qingtang. However, He was actually criticizing her for not respecting the dead. Yi Qingtang sneered. She bent down and picked up one skull. Zhou Xian sneered secretly after witnessing Yi Qingtang's move, but he did not show anything on his face. Junior sister Yi, that's not appropriate, he said and frowned. He then looked towards the apothecary and tried to apologize. My junior sister is still young and does not know her manners well. Please understand. Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was a side force of the Xinling sect. Under any circumstances, disrespecting the dead was out of the manner. The apothecary was stunned, but he did not dare to blame a sect disciple. He could only shake his head. Zhou Xian then looked towards Yi Qingtang and commanded, Junior sister Yi, do not do such unreasonable things. We are here for an investigation, not to mess around. Put back the skulls now. Zhou Xian's command made the other two disciples dislike Yi Qingtang even more. They were surprised by Yi Qingtang's courage, but disrespecting the dead was really inappropriate. Junior sister Yi, Spirit Condensation Mountain Village is under our sect. Do not ruin our fame. One of the disciples was displeased. Yi Qingtang raised her eyebrows slightly. She smiled when she noticed how the rest were convinced by Zhou Xian. She ignored Zhou Xian's cankered face and looked straight to the skull on her hand. The degree of the decay of these 300 skulls here is very severe. However, there is no obvious wound besides normal decay. Chapter 217. Zhou Xian was stunned a little when Yi Qingtang suddenly spoke. Junior sister Yi, there are 300 skulls here. We need further investigation to understand the situation. You should not be so certain with your judgment. Our investigation is closely related to the 300 lives here. We should examine every single skull. You cannot just conclude with a few sentences. Take this seriously. Zhou Xian sneered. The other two disciples also showed unpleasant expressions. They would not believe that Yi Qingtang could investigate the 300 skulls within such a short period of time and reach a conclusion. Yi Qingtang smiled when the rest challenged her. Her white fingers swiped through the pus on the decayed flesh. She forced open the mouth of the skull and pulled out the rotten tongue. Senior brother Zhou, look carefully. Is there anything abnormal with the tongue? Zhou Xian frowned as he felt disgusted by the rotten tongue. However, he did not show anything on his face and pretended to be calm. Just a rotten tongue. Yi Qingtang chuckled and pulled out the dagger from her waist. She used the dagger to scale down a layer of mucus from the tongue and put it in front of Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian almost vomited when he suddenly saw the disgusting mucus in front of his eyes. Senior brother Zhou, the tongue is severely rotten indeed. But the residue of the Duanyuan grass is well preserved. Duanyuan grass? Zhou Xian's face changed. He controlled his impulse to vomit and took a closer look at the mucus. It was true that there was some dark green plant residue among the mucus. The residue was very tiny, and it was easily neglected if one did not examine carefully. Duanyuan grass is a type of poisonous grass grown at the edge of the cliff. It is not fatal, but it will cause people to faint within a short period of time. The person will lose all senses and will not wake up no matter how noisy the surroundings are. Furthermore, it does not contain any smell. If it is crushed and put into tea, people will only treat it as tea leaves. No one will be able to detect that. Yi Qingtang smiled and explained. The night when the people of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village were murdered was the village master Wu Cheng's birthday celebration. They were busy for the whole night and were definitely exhausted in the morning. It's absolutely normal for them to drink some tea to quench their thirst. However, the tea that was mixed with Duanyuan grass was enough to make everyone in the village faint. I'm afraid they didn't even know how they died when they were murdered. Yi Qingtang spoke slowly. However, Zhou Xian and the rest were pale when they heard what she said. They had noticed earlier that all the victims did not fight back before they were murdered. They suspected that someone poisoned them and tested the corpses with a silver needle. But the silver needle did not turn black. They thought that their direction was wrong as even the most basic drug could turn the silver needle black. They had never thought that the murderer would use Duanyuan grass, which did not need any extraction processes. Duanyuan grass could make people faint, but it was not poisonous. Thus, no matter how they tried, they would have never found out the conclusion by using the silver needle. Furthermore, Duanyuan grass was crushed to powder. If it entered the stomach and was mixed with the flesh, no one could find out anything. Chapter 218. The residue on the tongue was mixed with blood. How many people could notice that? Zhou Xian's face clouded up. It was funny to recall how he mocked at Yi Qingtang previously. They were looking everywhere for the whole afternoon to no avail. Yet Yi Qingtang alone found out the hidden clues from such insignificant details. Burden? If she was counted as a burden, then the rest of them could be called useless. Zhou Xian, who tried to make things difficult for Yi Qingtang, was embarrassed now. All the sarcastic things he said were punching his own face now. Junior sister Yi, you are good at finding details, Zhou Xian said and gritted his teeth. Yi Qingtang lifted her eyebrows and said, Senior brother Zhou, do you want to take the residue for further investigation? She moved the dagger with mucus closer to Zhou Xian. The foul smell immediately flew into Zhou Xian's nose. He stepped back to prevent any contact with the mucus. Junior brother Liu, what are you waiting for? Keep the things here. Zhou Xian tried to remain calm as he called one of the disciples at the side. That disciple had vomited a few times by the scenes in the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village. His face was as pale as a piece of paper when Zhou Xian called his name. His unpleasant face was a clear comparison with Yi Qingtang's smile. Junior brother Liu could not help but go forward and take over the dagger. His body was full of goosebumps instantly. Yi Qingtang smiled as she saw the unpleasant faces. Only some of the skulls here have Duanyuan grass residue, and some are not obvious. If you want to look closely, you need to take their tongues. Junior sister Yi. Zhou Xian stopped Yi Qingtang before she finished her sentence. He could guess what she was about to say. The sect disciples here all came from prestigious families. They lived a comfortable life when they were young. Though they were requested to attend the mission, they would never use their hands to touch the filthy stuff. However, Yi Qingtang did not seem to be bothered by that at all. None of the rest wanted to scale mucus down from the dead people's mouths. They could feel the goosebumps by just imagining that. It's getting late today. We should not rush now. Tomorrow, I will ask the apothecary to find someone to do that. We need to analyze other things as well. Since we have figured out that it was all caused by Duanyuan grass, we should discuss the potential suspects who could have used the Duanyuan grass. Zhou Xian tried to speak in a normal way, but he felt constricted by Yi Qingtang's behavior and words. Yi Qingtang just shrugged her shoulder and did not say anything. Apothecary, please lead us to the place that we will be staying at. We will figure out the murderer based on the investigation today. Zhou Xian looked towards the apothecary and said,
Yes.
The apothecary replied respectfully. The apothecary and Wu Zheng then led the group to their living place. Only after the gate of the Spirit Condensation Mountain Village was closed, Zhou Xian and the rest felt slightly relieved. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.